Once upon a time, lobster was the last resort for the destitute. Only the poorest of the poor, those scraping the bottom of the barrel, would be forced to eat this lowly crustacean. It was a dish of desperation, a testament to hard times. Who would have thought that such a humble creature would one day ascend to the heights of culinary luxury? Fast forward to today, and lobster has become a symbol of opulence. In Vietnam, a single large lobster can command a price tag that would make your eyes water. It's a delicacy reserved for the elite, a dish that graces the menus of the finest restaurants and hotels. In the hands of skilled chefs, lobster is transformed into a work of art. It's a culinary masterpiece, a dish that can elevate any meal to a truly unforgettable experience. It's hard to imagine a world where lobster was so plentiful that it was considered worthless. A time when it washed up on shores, ignored and unwanted. Future generations may find it difficult to comprehend how such a prized delicacy could once be so abundant and so easily dismissed. Today, let's journey back to the turbulent past and explore what happened to lobster, once a cheap meal for the poor, even used as fertilizer and livestock feed, but now has become a premium, luxurious food for the wealthy. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay tuned for more exciting videos from the My Wonder channel in the future. Perhaps no one can imagine people walking along the beach, seeing plump lobsters washed ashore, and simply passing by without a second glance. In the 17th century, lobsters were that undervalued. Not only were they unpopular, but eating them was even considered a punishment for prisoners convicted of serious crimes. I bet today's youth would love to be punished by eating lobster a few times, wouldn't they? Even though lobsters helped Americans through tough harvest seasons, they once carried the stigma of being poor people's food. Lobster lovers around the world hold this crustacean in high regard, but perhaps no country embraces it quite like the United States. Every year on June 15th, we celebrate this delicious seafood. Yet, it's hard to believe that there was a time when lobster was so plentiful that people would simply ignore it, even if it was offered for free. A dish that was only eaten when one was too hungry and desperate. In fact, the from zero to hero journey of lobster took over 150 years. It began in the 17th century when the first European pilgrims arrived in New England, modern-day USA, and witnessed a lobster boom. They quickly realized that the native Algonquins ate a lot of lobster and considered it a primary source of protein. After each major storm, hundreds of lobsters would wash ashore, piling up into mounds over half a meter high on the beach. Instead of rushing to grab buckets full of plump lobsters for a seaside feast, the European colonists were bewildered by the sight of these unsightly sea bugs. If you were quick enough, you could pick out a few lobsters still gasping and not fully dead yet, to cook and eat before they spoiled. These English settlers had to eat lobster almost daily, and the stench of thousands of dead lobsters along the shore left a terrible impression of the dish. As a result, lobster became associated with a food only eaten when one was too hungry and too desperate. Those who ate lobster were either poor or of low social status, as lobsters were also used as fertilizer and livestock feed. By 1717, lobster had earned such a bad reputation. No one could have imagined that a few hundred years later, it would be ranked alongside expensive delicacies like caviar and filet mignon, etc. Because lobsters were so abundant, their price was very cheap. Lobster became a food only consumed in times of extreme hunger or by the poor lower classes. In the past, Americans also used lobsters as fertilizer for their fields, livestock feed, or as bait for fishing. European colonists exploited this bounty from nature as food for prisoners, slaves, or apprentices to cut costs. The main reason was that when lobsters die, they release an enzyme that causes their bodies to decompose and emit a foul odor. This is why lobsters were typically cooked alive, while dead ones were discarded. Not only were lobsters unpopular, but eating them was also considered a punishment for criminals convicted of serious crimes. Prisons fed lobsters to inmates so frequently that a law had to be passed declaring that serving lobster excessively was an act of cruel and unusual punishment. In 1622, Governor William Bradford of Plymouth Plantation was forced to confess that his prisoners were being fed a diet of lobster and water, a punishment that would be the envy of many today. The authorities were later compelled to limit lobster servings to just 3 times a week. According to historical records, in the 17th century, colonial residents in Massachusetts, USA, considered having lobster shells in the house a sign of poverty, as lobsters were a food reserved only for servants at that time. In fact, servants in wealthy households in Massachusetts had to fight to have clauses in their employment contracts stating that they would only have to eat lobster twice a week, according to Business Insider. On the other hand, workers in the city of Boston, Massachusetts, took to the streets to protest against the British Empire because they were being forced to eat lobster more than 3 times a week. The rise of lobster as a luxury dish. The tide began to turn for lobster in the mid-19th century as canned food became more popular and the railway system expanded across the United States. Lobsters were canned and transported far and wide, making them accessible to people in even the most inland cities. In 1836, Burnham&Morrill successfully canned the abundant lobster populations of Maine and Massachusetts and began marketing the product. However, many Americans still viewed canned lobster as little more than cat food. In early 19th century Boston, for instance, a can of prepared lobster cost only 11 cents, less than the price of 12 cans of baked beans at 53 cents. Gradually, as more canneries entered the market, canned lobster became a common sight on American dinner tables. By 1850, restaurants began serving lobster with salads, signaling its acceptance into the diets of the middle and upper classes. The advent of the railroad system further fueled the popularity of lobster. Americans could now easily travel to coastal cities for vacations, and fresh lobster quickly became a favorite dish among tourists. To satisfy their customers, restaurants began featuring lobster on their menus, creating innovative recipes that highlighted the crustacean's delicious flavor. Once considered a discard, lobster transformed into a delicacy, and prices skyrocketed in the 1880s. Due to overfishing, lobster populations dwindled, unable to keep up with the surging demand. Gradually, lobster became a beloved delicacy worldwide. The 1920s marked the first time lobster prices reached record highs. Advances in food preservation technology allowed lobster to be served on trains and even provided to soldiers as a wartime staple. However, lobster's reputation as a poor man's food didn't completely disappear. Many impoverished people continued to rely on it during the Great Depression of the 1930s. When World War II broke out, lobster's status was elevated to that of a delicacy. Even during wartime, the U.S. government did not ration lobster, and overconsumption led to declining populations. As a result, the wealthy could indulge in lobster and other seafood to their heart's content. It wasn't until after World War II, in the 1950s and 1960s, that overfishing caused local shortages and drove lobster prices to unprecedented heights. However, the market eventually stabilized in subsequent years. As a luxury item, lobster doesn't receive government subsidies like essential commodities, such as corn, beef, or wheat in countries like the United States. Consequently, lobster prices can fluctuate significantly. In 2012, the surge in popularity of fine dining led to an 18% increase in lobster prices, but this was followed by a sharp decline the following year. Between 2015 and 2016, the rise of the Chinese middle class sparked another price hike for lobster. However, prices stabilized quickly as numerous aquaculture farms shifted their focus to lobster production, increasing the supply in the market. Even during economic downturns, many restaurants maintain their prices for lobster dishes. The average price of live lobster in the United States is around $30 per kilogram. In Vietnam, both domestically farmed and imported lobsters from the US or Canada can cost millions of dong per kilogram. The high price of lobster can be attributed to several factors. Lobsters grow slowly, have voracious appetites, are susceptible to diseases, and their eggs are difficult to hatch. Additionally, transporting live lobsters is challenging as they require cool, humid environments with ample oxygen. Failure to maintain these conditions can significantly compromise the quality of the meat. Preparing lobster is also a complex process. The high cost of lobster means that any mistakes during preparation can result in substantial financial losses. Moreover, creating delicious lobster dishes requires skilled chefs. Dishes like lobster salad, grilled lobster, and lobster porridge demand expertise and technique to achieve the desired flavor. Who says lobster is a luxury? Back in the day, it was a staple food for many people at the bottom of the social ladder. Now, the price is sky high, leaving many of us only able to admire it from afar. Are you secretly wishing you'd been born in that era? The story of lobster shows that the value of something doesn't just lie in its glamorous appearance, but also in the interesting changes it undergoes over time. Perhaps it's these changes that make life so fascinating. From a poor man's food to a king on the dinner table, lobster has had a remarkable journey. Maybe this is a lesson about the constant changes in life. Who you are today doesn't matter as much as who you will become tomorrow. Today's video ends here. Don't hesitate to leave a comment below to let me know if you liked this video. Please share the love and give it a thumb up, as well as hit the subscribe button so you never miss an update from us. Thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye-bye.